What's your "it cannot possibly get worse" moment that actually got worse? Years ago, I was having a long stint of bad luck. My car broke down, and I had no car. This was pre-Uber days and the taxis used to charge astronomical amounts because, what other choice do you have? One night I paid $50 just to get to the next town for work. It was over half my pay for the night. Fate made it so. When I tried to buy a car, something went wrong. When I tried to rent a car, something went wrong as well. One day I was taking a taxi back home after unsuccessfully trying to purchase a car, and I was talking to the taxi driver about my shit luck, who was basically my therapist for the ride. He was very encouraging and optimistic. I thought my luck couldn't get worse then. The taxi he was driving broke down. Surprisingly, I wasn't angry at all. I was actually a bit relieved that he got to see how cursed I was and that I wasn't exaggerating. I remember excitedly exclaiming, "You see what I mean? You see?" as the car died on the road. When I was 14, I was hit by a car that made a turn on red while I was using the crosswalk on a bike. I broke 3 ribs, my right femur, and my collarbone. I remember kind of being in shock at my injuries. My leg not working right, laying on the ground. The driver is freaking out. People are stopping to gawk. I figured help was on the way and that it was all uphill from there. Someone was going to take care of me. It couldn't possibly get worse. Except this was in Arizona in August and the road was so fucking hot it was burning my skin. And I remember vaguely that it was like laying on hot coals. Everyone was freaking out around me and I was trying to tell them to move me, but they thought I wanted to try and get up, which is dangerous if your back is broken. So they basically held me down. I was being seared alive. It was the worst feeling ever. I ended up passing out, I think, because I don't remember much between that and the hospital, but I ended up with sunburn-like burns on my skin where it was touching the asphalt. Coming home from Germany, had to make an emergency landing in Iceland. There were several delays in getting us a better plane, and we eventually ended up spending the night at the airport. When we finally got to New York, we couldn't go through customs because the system was down. And then a couple babies woke up and started crying. A few years ago I was sharing a unit with a girl who had bipolar and was prone to outbursts. I had just came back from an overseas holiday to see my room completely trashed. The girl had broken into my room for whatever reason and had opened all my drawers. When I asked what happened, she proceeded to grab a knife from the kitchen and tried to stab me. After I ran to the neighbor's house and called the police, I was escorted to my boyfriend's house while they put a psychiatric hold on my roommate. When I arrived, he proceeded to break up with me and ask me to leave. So yeah, that fucking sucked. Had a shitty workday, normal stress I guess. But kids and wife were at something like a Chuck E. Cheese to celebrate something, and I was supposed to be there. Left work way late and got stuck in traffic trying to get there. It took 2 hours instead of the expected 20 minutes and I missed basically the entire thing. So to that point, just a shitty day. It happened to be near where my parents live though. Decided not to make it a total loss, so drove down to their house. Got rear-ended while sitting at an intersection and almost died. My car was a total loss and I was pushed into oncoming traffic, and through some miracle I was not hit by any of it. Driving home in the rental car, a few hours later, I got pulled over for speeding. The cop was nice and let me off though when I told him what happened. Had serious back pains and thought I would have to have back surgery. Got an MRI done. Nope, I had stage IV cancer. Definitely not the news I expected to hear. Now, I'm writing this from Beyond the Grave app. Just kidding. A year of treatment later, and I'm in remission. This is kind of minor, but recent. I was watching my favorite team lose in the Champions League final, and thinking, well, isn't this just great? Then my 2-month-old foster daughter projectile vomited all over me. Had just graduated college, and was doing laundry in my new apartment one evening. Washing all my brand new khakis for work. All of a sudden I hear water running, and see a flood of water coming from the laundry room. The drain hose from the washer hadn't been properly secured and popped loose, draining the washer's water all over the floor. I grabbed every towel, blanket, sweatshirt I had, and was frantically trying to sop up the water. I had to keep running to the tub to wring them out, throw them in the dryer, to try and keep up with all the water before it began to drip into the apartment below. I spent like 3 hours doing this and was exhausted as hell. I finally remember about the car keys I need to transfer to the dryer, and they're all streaked with black. I had left my brand new graduation gift Coach wallet in one of the pairs of pants, and the dye had bled all over all of my brand new work pants. So I had to figure out how to better secure the washer drain hose and rewash the pants, hoping the dye would come out. Thankfully it did. I then had to wait up so I could get them into the dryer, so I had pants to wear to work the next day. And I had to figure out what to do with my waterlogged, brand new expensive wallet. It was soaked through, so I had to pull out all the cards, etc. and then try to blot it dry best I could without ruining it. I eventually took it to a Coach store where they rubbed it with conditioning lotion to keep it from cracking. So after all the flood cleanup and laundry, I finally got to bed at like 2 AM. When I wake up, it's after 11 AM. I'm supposed to be at work at 9 AM, and it's now almost lunchtime. My alarm clock was blinking, meaning that the power had gone off at some point overnight and deactivated the alarm. With all the stress and activity the night before, I soundly slept well beyond when I was supposed to get up. So I had to call my manager of a job I'd been full-time at for all of 2 weeks and explain where I was and how I'd be in 3+ hours late. Fortunately, I had been an intern there and part-time my senior year, so I did have a year track record with the company under my belt. But that wasn't how I imagined using my first ever PTO hours earned. I was in college. I had procrastinated and had a 10-page philosophy paper to write in one night. While writing the paper, I got a call from a friend at a different school. He told me there had been a horrible car accident where some students had been on a trip for an organization, and on the way back to school a semi-truck driver had fallen asleep and plowed into the van of students, killing almost everyone. He called because my best friend, since I was 4, was a part of that organization, and he wasn't sure if she was in the van with everyone. No one could find her / get a hold of her. This went on for a while. I had to stop writing my paper because I couldn't focus on anything other than calling my best friend to find out if she was alive. Thankfully, she was. She was part of the organization, but didn't go on that particular trip. She was in the school's chapel praying, hence why her phone was off. I tried getting back to the paper, but coming down from that stress was hard. I stayed up pretty much all night. Then my printer wouldn't work. I had to leave earlier to go to the local library. It was community college. I didn't live on campus and print my papers. I can't remember what happened, but I couldn't print them there. So I went to the computer lab on campus to print them. I had emailed the paper to my school account, but for some reason it didn't show up. My class was 3 hours long, and it took almost the entire time for the email to show up so I could print it. I was so tired and stressed I just got up and read my report straight off the page and took a semi-passing grade. I was driving home and just relieved to be done with everything and glad that my friend was alive. I remember that stupid song Bad Day by Daniel Powter coming on the radio. I basically had the thought this was a bad day, but it's over now and I can go relax. Ha ha ha. Some background for this next part. One of our family dogs had found a nest of rabbits a month earlier and had killed a bunch of the babies, except one. I had been raising the baby while also finishing the last month of that semester. Its eyes weren't even open, and I didn't know if it would make it, but I fed that little guy and kept him warm. I named him Everett. He opened his eyes on Easter Day. He imprinted on me. He wanted to be near me all the time. I even took him to classes if I needed to because he was on a feeding schedule. He would sneak out of his box, jump in my bed, and curl up in the crook of my neck. He fit in the palm of my hand. I came home that day ready to crash when I saw Everett's cage mangled on the floor. My family was supposed to watch him for me while I was at class. No one was around. I frantically started tearing the house apart. He was so small he could be anywhere. I knew our one dog was behind this mess. As I was searching, the dog walked up to me, opened his mouth, and set Everett's little body on the ground before me. I looked for signs of life, but I knew that Everett was dead. I held him and wept. I was devastated. My dad sent me to Wushu school, these full-time martial arts / stunt schools in China, to be a stuntman like him. I was more interested in competition and trained for Sanda kickboxing since my teens. For 4 years I fought for 2 major teams in China, but got my ass handed to me at the 2007 Wushu World Championship. This was the closest I had ever gotten to a gold medal and was my best year so far. The doctors hospitalized me for a month and told my coach I couldn't train for 2 more. They knew I'd be out of practice when I came back, so my 2008 contract cut my pay by 25%. Most fighters in China are salaried and not paid per promotion. A month after I started training again, my left leg started killing me. A doctor told me I'd torn my ACL in the last fight and that, since healthcare in China sucks, my earlier doctor didn't even bother to tell me or didn't notice. My career was basically over, and if I kept kickboxing I wouldn't be able to walk in a year. I didn't tell my coach, but he found out by asking someone at the hospital and terminated my contract the next day. I asked for my annual pay guaranteed to me, and he told me to sue him, which I knew I couldn't afford. Our team was also in bed with the local government and supported, probably owned, by the Beijing party secretary, so my chances were exactly 0. I tried finding a private sector job, but everyone knew my educational credentials were a joke. Pro athletes in China are given degrees by sports universities that basically are a sham. For a couple weeks I sat around and blew through savings before realizing I had to learn a foreign language and emigrate if I ever wanted a shot at life. January this year. 2 days before my birthday I experienced the worst pain ever, my bowel and bladder being crushed by compressed L4/L5/S1. I got taken to hospital by ambulance. I had all of the telltale red flag signs for cauda equina syndrome. I was in so much pain that I passed out and stayed crashed out as I'd had maybe 4 hours sleep in the preceding 2 nights due to the sciatica pain. They did the absolute bare minimum, tested my reflexes, etc. I have a super high pain threshold and barely passed their tests. They discharged me in the morning despite an ambulance driver who saw me last night pleading with them to at least send me for an MRI. I couldn't even walk to my partner's car without the ambulance driver fetching me a wheelchair. The doctor said that if it got worse to go back to hospital. I spent the next 36 hours laying horribly in bed in a world of hurt, but it wasn't getting worse, or so I thought, until it did. The Wednesday, day after hospital, was my birthday. I was in no condition to go out and enjoy it. I stayed bedridden all day. My partner went to work, but cooked a slow cooked roast. I managed to get to the other end of the house, dining/lounge, and leant over her couch to eat dinner. It was immediately after dinner that the other side of my bowel and bladder was crushed. I called an ambulance. I got taken to a different hospital. They gave me an MRI in the morning, and sure enough the surgeons at the sister hospital wanted to perform an emergency discectomy/laminectomy on my L4. I should have had the surgery on the Tuesday. Instead I was the first life-saving emergency surgery on Friday morning. Thankfully it was successful, but now I have the likely lifelong effects of cauda equina syndrome. It was a significant reason why I lost my job. I can't work outside the home due to the bowel/bladder issues. I didn't want to be an ambulance chaser, but I've initiated a negligence claim against the first hospital